I don't meditate. I don't cold plunge. I don't diet extremely. I don't wake up in the bullshit workout routines at 3 a.m. because I'm ready to go hit the day. I don't do anything special. I'm just present.
I am at Pejman Ghadimi's official headquarters, a gentleman's heaven. And no, this is not a dealership. This is not a warehouse where they do rental cars. These are all owned by PJ himself with his blood, sweat, and tears and the work he's been able to put.
There's no secret formula to being utterly successful in terms of a certain way of heading the day. We're always prisoners of time. Can't conquer time. So what we can do is be in control of it. You set an intent for your life. You create experiences that come after that intent. There's no value that is good and bad, right and wrong, and there's no choice of right and left. Only the experience that comes with it and the flow of time that occurs behind it. Meaning time is no longer pushing you through it, but rather you are experiencing time on your experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Legacy and Billions. Right here, I'm in a gentleman's heaven. I am at Pejman Ghadimi's official headquarters, and I'm so privileged and honored to have the opportunity to be here. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to Ivan Garcia for making the connection and putting us together, and Mr. Andrew Goodman for making this all a possibility. I want to welcome PJ into the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for bringing me on.
You're very welcome. Should be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So guys, as you can see right now, we got a Bugatti right behind us, and we have, I would say, over 10 plus exotic cars. And if you are wondering how this is all possible, we're gonna be talking about it in this episode. And no, this is not a dealership. This is not a warehouse where they do rental cars. These are all owned by PJ himself with his blood, sweat, and tears and the work he's been able to put. And if you want to know more about his story and go a little bit deeper, more than what we're going to do in this episode, then make sure to check out his books, his courses, and his programs. I'm going to leave the link in the bio down here. And without further ado, let's freaking go ahead and get started, PJ. So I wanted you to take us back, man, to the beginnings of your story of how this all started, what conspired you to really build this empire and this vision that is now a reality for you.
So first off, let me just say, there's 22 cars here, 33 total. So that's a lot more than 10. And I'm a big car collector, and a lot of people often say, like, well, why do you need 30 cars? And so a big part of understanding my journey starts with understanding kind of my vision for life. And my vision for life has always been, even as a child, evolution through beauty, not order. So it's just really important to understand this concept so that the stories start to make sense to people as I kind of talk about them, right? The most important element of a human's life is his ability to create aspiration in his own life, to continuously rise to the top. And so as a child, I grew up into a very fancy lifestyle in Iran. My mom had an incredible job. I was like working for the State Department. My grandpa was a general in the army, you know, like, so we had servants, we had a nice house and everything. And then the revolution happened, and everything kind of shifted. So my grandpa died. My mom was then going to get executed for treason. The dynamic of the situation changed, and we went from, hey, this educated family and this, you know, good everything going on. My dad used to be the CEO of a bank, you know, and all these things. And then suddenly, nothing. Like, not like something, nothing, you know, like zero. So in order to avoid prosecution and death, my mom basically fled to go to France. She wanted to come to the US to be with her brother, but unfortunately didn't have that chance. So we ended up in France just because that's the only place we could go as refugees. And so she built a life with zero money, starting from zero again, which gave us basically food and shelter for 10 years. She started a small business, tried her best, but it was basically work, consume, work, consume. There was no like real growth or anything. But 10 years later, a chance came for her to, again, give up everything once more that she had built, as little as it was, and take a shot and come to America because her brother was here, and she was like, I just want my kid to go to America because there's just a better opportunity in America. So once again, gives up everything because she didn't want anyone to suspect that she'd come here to stay. You know, as she finally gets a visa after 10 years of trying. She's like, get rid of your cat And she's like, we're selling everything in the apartment and we have 1 week to leave. So we literally pack everything into 2 suitcases and I get rid of my cat. I literally sold out my cat for a Sega Saturn at the time. I was like, I'm getting a Sega Saturn when we get there. She's like, fine. And then we just basically take off to America. And what happens here, something very different is, I'm expecting my mom to start again. My uncle's pretty wealthy, like, not wealthy, like middle class wealthy, like has a great job, executive level job, etc. So I'm coming to a world that I never seen before. Big screen TVs, like things that like the American dream and all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. We're gonna have fun. Well, my luck, like a year later, after being in LA for a year and like really comfortable, and I'm going to school, I'm like, this is great. I'm gonna hopefully have a social security number soon, all these things. And something happens with my uncle's job, and basically this huge fiasco, and we go again to broke. So now we get in a truck, and we go on a U-Haul from California to Virginia, and basically get stuck in my uncle's basement, where he had a basement, separate uncle, and he was like, he owned a restaurant, he was like, you guys can live in the basement, we'll figure it out. So I'm back to poverty again. And so I saw this theme in my life as a child where I'm constantly being challenged with this idea that no one will save you, right? So at a very early age, I learned that no one's coming to save me. And so my mom, this well-known executive / important political person in Iran, is now working at a cafe as a cashier, making $7 an hour. And what hurt me was not like, oh, I feel bad for her or whatever. I understand my mom was a fighter, but I clearly saw that my mom didn't have the strength in her to fight anymore. So I saw that our survival was in question. Not our food, not the fact that we had shelter, but even survival, self-reliance survival was at stake. And secondly, I also saw that whatever I ever hoped of having, that glimpse of lifestyle I got in LA of what it could be, that wasn't in the books for me, or no one was going to give me that. But even at that very young age, I kind of knew that by having touched it, having felt it, I was like, I want that big screen TV. I want that comfort. I want these little things. And other people around us then, like that I was going to school, other kids had that. We were in a very affluent community, lots of white kids, and these kids were doing stuff like they had it. So, at 16, their parents bought them cars, and I was like, that's not even in the books for me, So as I saw these things happen, it started really triggering me, this need to like participate instead of sit on the sidelines and wait, because no one was coming. So it's like, hey, no one's coming to save you. And every time someone's coming to save you, they go away basically. Something happens like, and they can't save you. Like they're trying to save you, but they can't. So I saw this life lesson very early on that like, I just have to go out there and figure something out. And so I begged McDonald's to give me a clean the floor job, but I didn't have a green card yet, so they wouldn't do that at 14. I started, looking around for what kind of jobs I could do. I started washing cars for $1 a car in the cold. I was like, hey, if that's what it takes, like $1 is better than no dollar. And little by little, I started just getting into this mental place that it was okay to work and not so looking for the ideal work. I think one of the reasons a lot of kids today don't find success in life is because they're always looking for a perfect scenario, the perfect like job. Is this a job that I want? Well, you don't have a job. Well, the job you want maybe is not here, but a job, $15 an hour, is better than no job. So they kind of say either I have what I want or I'm not doing anything. So for me, it was completely the opposite. I was like, I'd rather earn $1 than earn no dollar. If I get a better job, I'll move on and I'll keep moving. And so eventually I convinced a few people to get me a job in a remodeling company, where in this remodeling company I basically would sell roofs and siding on the phone like a telemarketer. Most people would say that's the worst job on the planet. To telemarket to me was an opportunity to learn sales. It was an opportunity to learn customer service. My English was, I would say, probably a 6 out of 10, but communicating with people on a daily was important. And I had a lot of overcoming rejection and things that I, as a child, obviously you don't like to be told to F off, at all times. And that's what a lot of that was. So
at 14 years old, you were already experiencing in the workforce and developing yourself as a young man, really to take responsibility. And without any form of entitlement, really you wanted to
just work. Not a joke. My first client ever that I called was a prank by the office. They gave me a lead sheet, with people I had to call. And the guy's name was Mr. Black Dick. And it wasn't a joke. And I called the guy and I'm like, is Mr. Dick home? And I'm like, is there a Black Dick home?
That's insane.
And the guy hangs up on me, starts cursing me out, and everybody's like,
so was that
like they're a prank, you know, about like everybody in the office. And remember, I'm this like 14-year-old that's like on his first day trying, like, I'm wearing a collar shirt, everybody's there in a t-shirt, like, why the fuck do we have this job? And I'm asking for a black dick at home, you know, like, and so, I mean, it was an interesting time for sure. There was a lot to do, you know, a lot to learn, but nonetheless, the main thing for me was a lot of the kids there and the people that worked there, they had this option. This was option one. Option two was they could go work at McDonald's, they could work somewhere. I didn't have a green card. So that job for me was like everything. Meaning if I lost that job, the alternative was washing cars for $1 an hour. This job was paying $12 an hour. So to me, $12 an hour, and remember, this is like in the 90s, you know, this was a big deal because the average wage then was $6 an hour. So I was like, I'm in an office, I get to work at like every hour after school, so they're flexible, and they're paying me. So I was like, dude, like I have it made, you know? Versus everybody else was like, why are we doing this? These leads are crap, I can't close sales, and this. And I was like pounding, calling. I was like, no, I'm gonna call. And long story short, because I did so much calling, I got really good at it. You know, and I figured out how to do this and like how to basically sell windows and siding on the phone, like appointments so guys could go out there, and I would talk to the sales guys, learn what they need and how they wanted me to set appointments. And over the next 4 years, I basically became the director of that company. And basically it was the owner and me, you know, and so.
By the time you were just getting out of high school, like 18?
Yeah, I was making like 65, 70K a year. I had like 2,500 to 5K paychecks, you know. I had commissions, you know, like I was head of an office, and by then I had a green card, you know, like I now was an official, you know, like employee in my head, you know. I had originally gotten in with a school permit, so they kind of hadn't looked or asked for, I had a social number, but you know, it had one of those not valid for work when you're an immigrant. So I just never gave them the card, and I was like, oh, here's the number, and here's that, and they were a small company, so they kind of overlooked it. And then years later, when they were like, hey, by the way, we just need to renew our stuff, I was like, oh yeah, here, now I have it. And I was like, oh, cool, same number, and that was great.
Question for you, looking back, would you advise high school students to actually work while they go to school?
100%.
Were you able to balance both?
Well, it's not, so the argument is, so that's a really good question. Should you, and was I able to balance both, and can people balance both? The argument is not, should you? Can you afford not to? Because when we say, this is the entitlement society, right? When you say, can you balance both? Well, motherfucker, go learn to balance both. It ain't about can you, like life's not about like, you feel comfortable doing that, man? Like you okay running a mile? No, motherfucker, go run a mile. Like, go figure it out. Like, you're gonna be fat, go run. You know, like, it's not okay. So, the argument to put a child today, you know, into true society and say, I want you to be comfortable all the way till you're 18. And then at 18 say, hey, this comfort starts now, you're on your own. Well, it's the stupidity of parents, right? You have to think of it and say, my child has to understand the integration of society while having me, so as they fall, I can catch them back up until they're 18. So when they fall at 18, 19, 20, I'm sure I'll be able to help. That's the point of being a supportive parent. That's the point of being successful in life, so you can provide your kids with a baseline higher, right? It's like every idiot that complains about trust fund kids, I tell them, I'm like, first off, you're just jealous of trust fund kids. That's the thing. Secondly, the main thing with trust fund kids too, they deal with their own set of problems. And the other side of that is also that outside of just the psychological side of being a trust fund kid, you have to understand that, like, why do we work? Like, I grew up poor. My daughter's not going to grow up poor, right? Like, she's going to grow up, and at 16, she's going to have a $100,000 car. She's going to have a $30,000 watch and a $20,000 handbag. Okay, I didn't have these things. But that's the point of evolution, so that she doesn't have to go work at McDonald's to learn the ropes. You know, and people are like, I want my kids to have nothing. Why the hell would you work so you leave your kids with nothing? And also, you don't want your kids to have everything without understanding the value, how to maintain and grow everything, right? So the skill set necessary to teach my kid is not going to be, how do you survive working at the cashier at McDonald's? No, it's going to be, how do you respect that? And how do you understand your baseline is here? So how do you use that to go even higher? How do you take my 100 million and make it into 10 billion? You know, like, that skill set is what I want you to learn to develop at 15. I want you to learn how to do investments at 15, because I didn't learn investments till I was in my 20s. You know, like, so you have a 5-year leap over me to be able to put that in play, and you have tech. You have things I didn't have. Well, now you're able to maximize that opportunity. Didn't exist for me. So that's how I look at, like when we talk about youth and should people do that. Well, you ain't got a fucking choice. If you ain't got no money, you got to balance both. Now, if you're born into a rich family, you don't have to balance both. Maybe you have that alternative and that capacity. But I think kids should start working as early as like 10, 11 years old. And I'm not a big believer in the school system either on any level for any reason. So I never graduated anything past high school, and I sucked all the way through. And the argument is always that if the school system can't provide you with the skill set necessary above what you can learn yourself, then what is the purpose of hanging a piece of paper on your wall when you could have had that same education in half the times, a third of the cost, 100 of the cost, or even free, and be efficiently able to practice this in experience in the work field for years? So like, I just don't get the whole point. I understand the whole medical idea. I understand if you're a doctor, because you see, science degrees have a standardized performance level that has to be met because you are involving other people. Like you go to a doctor, he's operating on you, right? You're giving you medicine that could kill you. So there needs to be a standardized. That doctor can say, I learned on YouTube, like this was great. I saw this guy operate, like I think basically we hold this way and I just go in with a knife. Yeah. You're dead, right? Yeah. So when a degree involves a profession that requires an experience that is greater than oneself, but the experience of the collective good, that requires a degree. And that degree should be met with the highest level of standard. I think doctors should only go to Harvard and should only go to the top places, not community colleges or like half-ass clinics and things like that. But like, what's a business degree? Like, what the hell are you going to learn in school about business? Like, what is it going to teach you? Oh, well, here's how economics look. Okay, well, take a 3-hour video on YouTube that's free from a guy that breaks down economics. Way better than a teacher. I guarantee if you put all the economic teachers together, that one guy that explains that on YouTube is probably better than 80%. I'm not saying there isn't 20% Ivy League school guys that are like, this is the thing you came here for, this is why you paid 30 grand. But realistically, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That wisdom was very valuable because I ran into somebody the other day who was very wealthy and successful, and he said, when my kids turn 18, I'm not going to give them shit. They're going to have to work for everything because I want them to grow through that pain and suffering that I went to know they got to earn it. But I think it's wiser in what you're saying to really help them respect and admire what you've done and be humble to, hey, if you had to do this, you have to go through this process. But I'm setting a new standard, a new benchmark for you to advance all the work that we've done.
Well, it doesn't make sense otherwise. I mean, think about this in your own life. Like if you build a $100 million company and you have $100 million, like, yeah, you sell a company and have that money. Do you go back and start a $5 at a time company? Or do you say, I have leverage, we can probably go into a much larger portfolio type business, and how do we turn that 100 million into 300 million? Life is a progressive game. You don't turn the clock backward and go, I want to relearn the skills of selling popsicles on the side of the street for this next one, except this time we're going to sell toys. No, you go, I didn't have money, so we had to sell popsicles and toys to get here. But now I have money, so why would we start a business that makes us $10 at a time? I don't have 20 years. I have money. I don't have time, right? Like so I don't know why certain people don't understand that money itself is nothing more than your ability to purchase your life experience ahead of the experience itself rather than behind, you know?
I totally agree with you. And so you were a director of sales for that company. You were crushing it. You got out of high school. And then what did the next chapter in your life look like?
So I was really bored. I get bored every few years because I was like really good at my job. So I wasn't doing anything. I was pounding chicks in the office. Like things were like terrible. Like I was just like having a good time, but I was like, I felt unproductive in the sense that I wasn't getting ahead. And so I really had a kind of identity crisis in the sense that at 18, I was like, I need to kind of figure out, since I knew I didn't want to go to college.
And at that time, I'm assuming you were ahead of most high schoolers and kids. So you were an independent lone wolf operating at a different level. So you were kind of like, who were you hanging out with at that time? No, it was just you and people.
Yeah, because I didn't see the value of those relationships because my value was zero in my head. So it was like, I have to create value to be able to identify value. So my thing was, anyone I meet now is going to be someone from the past mentally that's just going to entertain me, not help me. So I don't need entertainment. If I need entertainment, I'll watch a movie. You know, like that's fine. Or I'll go out, like hang out with car guys or something for a moment. And so, even at 18, that was a big thing in my life because cars have always been a thing since I was a very young kid because I was making money, so I was able to buy a car. You know, not like a crappy car, something exciting. And so I've done that from the very second car I've owned. But the main thing that happened in my life is at that point, I kind of looked back and I said, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to go to school. And one thing I knew is that my dad used to be in banking, which I never saw after my mom left Iran, so he didn't want to come. So they broke up ways. He never supported my mom, so he kind of took off and did his thing. But I knew he was a successful banker. And so the first thing I told myself is I'm lacking this identity. I don't know what I want to do, but my dad was successful at this. So in my head, I'm like, maybe it's in my blood to be a banker. So I really wanted to be a banker, but I really didn't understand how banking worked in America, and this wasn't my thing. So I spent basically 6 months studying like all the banks there and like which banks do what. And I realized that there was a bank specifically that focused heavily on selling like accounts and things like that because they had divisions inside supermarkets. You know, like inside supermarkets they had like kiosks and banks. Not ATMs, but actual banks with employees. So I was like, well, this is interesting because it's a very sales-driven job. And I was like, what do I have the last 4 years? A lot of sales experience. So long story short, I took 6 months of studying this. I spent hours just paying attention, going to grocery stores as if I was going to buy something, only to just sit there and watch how they interacted, how they were. And then I basically convinced my bank, because that was the same bank that was actually like I had an account at. My mom also had a friend that was in one of these banks, and I was like, hey, like, get me an interview to like come work. And she was like, oh, what do you want to do? You want to be a teller? Like, I'm like, no, like I need like 80 grand a year. She's like, I don't make 80 grand a year and I'm a manager. I'm like, okay, well then give me an interview for a manager. And she's like, you don't have any banking experience. But I'm like, yeah, but like get me an interview. Like I'll do the rest. So she's like, okay, so this is a joke, but she's friends with my mom. She's like, you know what? I'm going to get you an interview with this guy in the supermarket because it was a lower division, you know, and she was in a big bank. And she was like, he'll give you an interview. So I literally go there and the guy thinks I'm a joke. Like basically he's a fucking 18-year-old sitting in front of me. Wants to be a bank manager, like get out of here. You know, like what, but let me ask you questions. So I literally told him, I was like, look, you're selling. You want people to sell. All your employees are sitting there at the desk. You want them to be out there selling, but they're not selling. I was like, hire me and I'll sell. I was like, I will sell everything. Like make me a manager, like pay me, like, and I'm like, pay me this amount. So in my head, I don't have like interview training, you know, I don't have corporate training. I work in a smaller office, so I don't know any of these things. So this guy kind of thinks I'm an arrogant prick and goes, you know what? Okay. So he's like, I'll make you a deal. You go out in the aisles and you bring me 2 clients, you know, like since you're saying you can sell. And then I'll give you a shot at an interview. So I did that because I had watched what they were doing, so I knew what they were supposed to do. So I had a suit on. I literally stole a name tag. It said Chris. I wasn't Chris. Yeah, I wasn't Chris. I was like, doesn't matter. And I literally walked through the aisles, and I convinced 2 people to come back and sit down. It took me like 6 minutes. And the guy was baffled. Like, how, like, what'd you tell him? And I'm like, nothing. I just persuaded them to want to do banking here, even though I know nothing about the accounts you sell, like the products or anything. So it was like, it was more about the relationship. And he was very like, he went from my biggest doubter to my biggest supporter. He's like, I need to get you an interview with like, because it was a mock interview in his head. You know, he's like, I need to get you an interview with the regional, like see if we can get you somewhere. They put me in a management training program for a couple of months. I graduated that like in half the time. And I became a very young bank manager. And then I got promoted every 7 months, 6 months, 7 months to all the way up to VP level management. And then I took over an airport division that we helped set up for the bank. And then I was living the good life, you know, like incredible pay, corporate structure, you know, like vacations, lots of employees. I bought my first Lamborghini while I was employed, and I was on cloud 9, right? And then
Time frame?
no, I was this was year 2001, and this went on to like 2005, 2006. I got fired in late 06, early 07.
And why'd you get fired?
Because I was a prick. I was really good at my job. Like I was really, really good, but I was bored again. So I was good and I was bored. So I would go to the office from like 11 and leave at 2. And I had the highest numbers in companies, so it didn't matter per se. But I also didn't like, but I didn't like my boss, and I pissed him off a lot. Like looking back, I pissed him off a lot because he was weak mentally. And he didn't like a young guy that was a third of his age, showing up with a Lamborghini, parking in his spot, not giving a shit, getting all the credit, constantly being like opposing to corporate culture because it didn't make sense. And eventually I learned that while I played the politics of getting promoted really well, I didn't play the politics of staying employed very well. Does that make sense? Like I played the politics of like his boss loved me.
Right.
Get it? Like, and the next guy always loved me. But the guys that were at my level that I was supposed to make happy,
they're responsible for it.
the ones that I was supposed to make happy, I gave them tools to say that I was out of their way, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of control over me.
Yeah.
Even when they came to like my reviews, you know, in corporations, they do yearly reviews. They were like, well, PJ, let's sit down. I was like, here's everything that's wrong with my stuff. And he would be like, oh, well, why'd you do that? I'm like, so that way you don't have to do your review. Here's everything you need to know that we're already messing up. Here's the plan for everything we're going to fix. And 3 months later, it was fixed. And instead of looking at that as like, holy crap, like I have a star child, I can go focus on these other people that clearly have issues. It took away their power. And that was my shadow, right? It was my kind of like, ha, 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 like you don't have any power over me, buddy. And a part of them knew that too, because I drove better cars, I lived in better homes, because I was always very intelligent in finance, and I had made some excellent investments in land and lots during that time with all the extra money I had. So I was much richer than even my boss's boss, you know, from a dollar standpoint, outside of the job and what I was getting paid. So that makes people very uncomfortable. But you know, I've always said, a lot of people I had a lot of good mentors in banking, and they used to tell me, you gotta be humble. And you gotta tame yourself down to fit in. And I never agreed, and I still to this day don't agree. I don't think you should ever make an excuse for being amazing at what you do, even if it makes people uncomfortable. You shouldn't make an excuse for excellence because someone needs to feel better about being average. Like if you're fit and other people are fat, then you can make that point that you're fit and you feel good. You shouldn't make an excuse for, I'm not going to take my shirt off so someone doesn't feel bad in this room. You know, while I'm at the gym here, I don't want to offend this gentleman here, you know. I don't think that's necessary. I think if you are excellent at something, you should be an inspiration to others to want to be excellent. Yeah. If you're richer than others, you shouldn't be afraid or feel bad that the world is going through an economic downturn and you're driving a Lamborghini or a Bugatti. No, I mean, I understand people's pain. It isn't mine to carry, not everybody's pain, right? I've had my own set of challenges I've overcome. I shouldn't have to tone down my opportunity because someone who can't see theirs isn't willing to take it, right? So that's always been my motto in life. You know?
So powerful what you just said.
Yeah, but to me, that's why whenever they say, you know, in life it's about being humble, and I talk to trolls on the internet, I'm like, go fucking suck a dick or something. And they're like, wait, I know richer guys than you that are humble. I'm like, great. I know plenty of richer guys than me that don't buy shit. That doesn't make them humble. Like, so what happens is a lot of times that's judgment, right? That's a person who doesn't have what you have, that wants to judge what you do. And the moment we acknowledge that with a response, not a response of like telling them to go fuck themselves, but a response that's along, let me change how I am, because a peasant, I call him, you know, on the side of the street has an opinion about a king. That peasant doesn't tell the king how to lead. You know, like, why do we care? You know, it's like, why do I care about his opinion? So that's the issue, right? Now, I've never had much wealthier friends than me come at me and say, dude, like no boat, nothing, next 3 years, we gotta like lay low. I'm like, what are you, a criminal? You know, like what are you worried someone's coming after you? Like, no, nobody does that. But from the bottom up, it's always judgment. So it's not like criticism, it's judgment. So when someone doesn't know what life experience you're living, they don't like it, so they want to bring you to their life experience. Unfortunately, from the bottom up, nobody wants to go back to the bottom, so nobody will ever acknowledge that. Now, people often feel like frauds in the sense that they rise to the top, maybe without the consistency of knowing what they do. Maybe you made a ton of money, maybe in Bitcoin, and maybe you never really had a skill, right? Maybe you got lucky, your friend told you to buy $500 in Bitcoin when it was 10 cents, you know, and you're like, oh, I just left that, I didn't even know the account was there. Now you wake up and you have $25 million. Now you go buy all these cars. You feel like a fraud because you don't have a skill or talent that has led you here. So you don't want that attention because it's going to be questioned how you got what you got. If you're a trust fund kid, you may feel that way because you don't want that attention for someone to say, well, you didn't do anything for your money. I tell people, you got to think completely differently about this. You got to stop thinking about why do these people have an opinion about how you live your life. Instead, you got to really look at it and say, okay, I have a Lamborghini and you don't. Why am I taking advice from someone that doesn't have one? Now, if a Lamborghini owner tells me I should keep my car at home because people are vandalizing cars, I may want to take that as like I should pay attention to that because I don't want my car to get hurt, not because someone has an opinion of how I live my life. So, you know, I've continuously pushed that envelope, even if it's made people uncomfortable. And I believe, I've been a big believer my whole life growing up, that even in corporate America, that this wasn't the wrong approach. It was just a choice of how to approach life. And when I got fired, I took a consulting gig after in another banking institution. Something interesting happened because that second gig I quit after. You know, I started building a business, but also I was like, oh, well, I don't want to lose my history, you know, in banking and everything else. Let me try to get back in the door. And the second gig I got, I actually quit it and favored working for myself for one reason. I was bored again like a year later of that gig. And something interesting happened that, because I pay attention, my greatest gift is being able to pay attention to everything around me at all times, 100% of the time. So what happened in that place is I went to a board meeting, you know, still an executive. I pull up, everybody's got these S600, you know, nice cars. Like, so they're not, this was a much better bank. They weren't poor, they weren't poor-minded. You know, people were wealthy, like in the sense that they were bankers, they understood they were good at what they did. So I was like, oh, I'm home. You know, like these guys are really getting me, whatever, we're good. But then when I went to this meeting, all these executives making $250,000 plus a year, they all got black Mercedes, black Lexus, black this. Here I am with an orange Lamborghini convertible. And when my car's parked amongst all these black cars, I look outside the window and I'm like, okay, it's not that they're wrong. It's that I don't belong here. Because it's not about elevating 20 people to my level. It's about understanding that 20 people enjoy being amongst these types of people. And as the only orange car, take away the Lamborghini part because it's the same price as these cars, I'm not in the right culture. Like, I need to remove myself from the culture because I'm the cancer. And by staying here, I'm basically like killing them because I'm trying to be like, aspire for more, buy a Lamborghini, like you should also like have this. And they're like, yeah, no. And meanwhile, I'm the one that's like, and they're like, you should buy a Mercedes, like a black Mercedes. And I'm like, no, why would I do that? So it's this like clash of culture, right? And so that day I literally got in my car, I went, handed my resignation, and get the fuck out. I never went back to the banking route again. You know, I said, corporate culture just isn't a culture that's gonna allow me to express my growth within the confines of that other structure pushing me down. And the one bigger kick with that, as on my drive to resign, the one thing that made me like 100% certain I was going to resign was that I looked at my boss's boss's boss. And it's like the guy that was right under the board of directors, like basically like the CEO and under for the bank. And I asked myself, if I play my games right, for 35 more years, I'm 1 in a million shot at being that guy. Well, the argument was, that I made to myself was, even if I had a guarantee I would be that guy in 35 years, he could suck my dick. Yeah, and I was like, I'm completely out of here. Like, I was like, I don't want that guy's job, even if I was guaranteed that if I played my game right, I bought a black car, I fit in, you know, I took my lunch during the lunch hour and then sat there in a boardroom or had a meeting and all these, that I would still not want to be that guy. No matter how much money he had a big yacht, you know, he was much richer because the bonus was like 20 million a year. I didn't want to be that guy. And I was like, I don't enjoy that life. I don't think that I could ever see myself being that. And so I was like, definitely I'm in the wrong path because if I'm here, it's leading that way or nowhere. I like to go up. I like to get promoted. I like to make more money. So like, if that's the path up, it ain't the path I want. So why stay somewhere if you're going to be stagnant? So I was like, I'm not interested in being there, so I'm leaving. So I left, and I had already started my own business. It was the world's first investment fund in cars, watches, and art. And the Great Recession was upon us. And in the middle of that, I was like, you know what? I'm out of a job, and I'm just going to figure it out. And it took about 6 more years to like really build it. Did as high as, it was like 380 million in revenue. But the problem with that business, so this is where the internet gets really excited. 380 million, this guy was rich. No, I wasn't. I was taking home $2.5–3 million out of that 300 million. It's like the idiot that tells you I'm $1 million closer on their real estate card. I'm like, wait, so you sold one house? You know, if you're in LA, I'm a $10 million club. Wait, so you sold a third of a house, you know? And it doesn't make sense, right? So it's like, it's optics, right? So the optics were exciting. The idea was exciting. The logistics were exciting. The money was shit. Because you have to understand, if you're in a $300 million business, you're in a $300 million state of liability. And if you make $3 million, that means that one mistake, you're basically making like 1% margin, which is terrible, terrible. So the structure of that business from a financial scalability standpoint was garbage. Now, it paid me enough to sustain my lifestyle, continue to have fun, buy more cars, you know, enough to do that. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted growth. I wanted what we have today. And in order to get to what we have today, I had to give up who I was yesterday. And that was kind of the beginning of when I kind of had a choice to make. And this was the uncomfortable choice that I learned from my mom. I gave up everything, again, like she did, you know, time and time again, for the opportunity and attempt to build one thing. So that's when I kind of left the idea of structural conforming business that's black and white. And I had an idea that I wanted to start online business. And people thought at the time, this was very early, so just so you know, like we're talking like 2008.
You're what I would call an OG.
Yeah, real, correct. Yeah, like way, like people don't realize how far back my roots go to the internet, but like, because they're like, oh, this guy came out of nowhere talking about these cars and the scam bullshit on exotic car hacks. I'm like, yeah, you guys are idiots because you're like literally on TikTok thinking we have a following on TikTok. Like, like they don't understand how far back we go. But 2008, I wanted to teach. I love teaching. I was always been. This has been my. It was my core skill in all aspects of my growth in life. Has always been that even in corporate leadership, my style of leadership was basically educational. So it was always about teaching, training, and fostering talent. So that was how I became very successful. So I always said I want to teach, and I want to teach business because I was so good at it, and I was such a young age so good at it. So I started writing blogs on the internet in 2008. And at first it was a joke, it was blogs, you know, like whatever. I found the 16-year-old kid who was the son of one of my clients at the bank back in the day, and I was like, hey, you know tech, he's Asian, so I was like, Asian people have to know tech. So I put him to work, and he basically was like, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't really know, like just I want to put this up, this information up, like how do you do it? He's like, oh, I'll build you a site, but he wasn't a very good designer at the time. And he was like, okay, like, and I was like, doesn't look nice. I was like, doesn't look like, so I got lucky. One of the guys that was reading my blog was another gentleman that was from the gym. He was another Persian guy that was like, yeah, I really like what you're writing. He's like, but it's not very pretty. I'm like, oh, I'm glad you said that because I think it's ugly. He's like, well, I'm a designer. He's like, can I design it for free? I was like, sure. So like he built it. And then I looked at my Asian counterpart, his name's Alan, and I was like, hey, you okay if we like let him in on this? Because there was no money in it anyways. He was like, yeah, I don't care. Like, let's just let him. I was like, so there's 3 of us like basically making this blog. And this blog was called Secret Entourage. At the time it was called Secret Consulting. It evolved to Secret Entourage. And it became the first lifestyle business university on the internet. Over 5 years it took us to basically make our first million online. 5 years. 5 years. 5 years. I invented literally what the podcast is today because we were the first ones to do interviews just like this in 2008 when podcasts weren't around. We were doing video interviews like this of people that people didn't know who were successful, and we were putting it out on the internet. We had the first lifestyle blog around business. We had the first set of podcast interviews in the world on that topic. We had incredibly mastered the art of literally putting business and lifestyle together. And I'll tell you how crazy and how far back we go. I invented having quotes over lifestyle photos on Instagram.
I remember when those were popular.
Right. Well, you know when they were popular. I was getting banned from Instagram because they thought, at the time, this was so early Instagram, that they didn't think I had the rights to use those photos, when we had paid for rights to use photos just so we could publish on Instagram. That's how far back we go. And so we made that popular. Now, what did we do wrong? We built that company to eventually make $5 million a year. We did everything wrong. This was our first online company. We didn't understand it. This was trial and error. It wasn't that I made mistakes, it's that it was an educational experiment. But we learned what doesn't work, and we learned what not to do. So we launched our second online platform. And our second online platform made $1 million in a year instead of 5 years. Our third online platform made $1 million in a quarter. Now we make over $1 million a day. So there's a very different dynamic of just what people don't realize, that the 10-year journey of my online switch, because people constantly nagging me, oh, you shouldn't have left your big business. Why did you drop a $300 million plus revenue business to go and do the online marketing? What are you, 5 years old? Like, what does that even mean? Like, why are you taking pictures of Lamborghinis on the internet? What are you, fraud? You're stupid. You're this.
And PJ, do you mind if I interrupt you?
Yeah.
You said right now you do $1 million a day?
Yeah, so let me tell you how. So when we opened the brand, it took us 5 years to make $1 million. Then it took us a year for the second brand. Then the third brand, a quarter. Now when we launch a new brand, on day one, we make $1 million. 1 million in one 24-hour cycle.
Yeah, in a launch, which is very impressive.
And what's even, and let me clarify this. Not $1 million in revenue, $1 million in profit. Let's just be, there's a very big difference, because I like small numbers that are meaningful, not big numbers that mean bullshit. So, you know, today we have this model down to a science, and all of our communities are heavy 8-figure communities, you know, doing really well. Most people wouldn't know that. You know, they see our online stuff and they're like, oh, these guys are selling courses. We have a systematic approach that is so good that if you came to me today and said, I want to launch an online course, help me do it, I wouldn't even touch it unless you paid me $1 million to look at it. Because I know how powerful our model is, and how if we choose to incorporate something and choose to do it, it'll make you that in a day. You know, so if I know that, then I'm like, I'm not doing this for like 20 grand or like, oh, I'm going to help you, like, not give a shit. So that became the core of kind of our businesses, basically the digital space. And then we branched off from there and built, outside of like just the digital side of it, I own a lending business today that basically lends out $40 million to jewelers and car dealers. These individuals borrow money on demand if they're in the system, basically, and they can get like $1 million loan in 10 seconds. And basically,
this is your company?
Yeah. So basically, I loan out all my own money. So this isn't raised or anything. I've never raised investor money. So it's all my money, and I just lend it out to people that I've known and get incredible fee returns. And that business has been around for years now. And then my personal car collection is another hobby. You know, like I have stakes in a lot of other companies as well, including tech companies and lifestyle companies. So that's kind of like the business aspect of what I do. But I still, to this day, if people ask me, well, what do you do for a living? I'm an online teacher, and I teach wealth management principles, which date back to my banking days, except unconventional mindset and unconventional finance for modern day people today through the optics of lifestyle, such as cars, watches, art, and investments in those things, instead of looking at them as a consumer aspect. Like people look at these things as I get rich, I buy stuff. I look at things and I say, we have a wealth preservation strategy that enables you to get rich and even richer by buying things, and then preserving that wealth by transferring it instead of constantly consuming goods and then getting rid of them and losing money. So the average person will buy a car and expect to lose $20,000, $30,000 in their first couple of years. I will buy a much more expensive car and expect to make 100 grand after I'm done driving it. So these are very different mental approaches, and people will argue, well, you're rich, that's why you can do that. That's not true. Many of our students come to us with $1,500, zero knowledge of cars, watches, or any of that stuff. 1 year later, have made portfolios of over $250,000 off of that $1,500. That's not a joke. We have thousands of testimonials for that. Some even $500,000. We have members that have now crossed the $1 million range. and they started with zero knowledge. So they're not coming in with like, I'm a millionaire and I want to know how to preserve wealth. They're coming in with, I have no money, I want to make money. And then we have other individuals that come to us and say, hey, I've already built a portfolio of cars, money, etc. I'm doing it wrong because obviously I'm losing money every year. What should I do different? And those people come into different level courses. So that's the core of kind of what our business does.
And that was all based on your history of working in sales to then management to leadership development
banking,
to discovering that you were great at teaching and educating people. How did your previous history lead onto this? Like, how did you get to the point that you found your thing?
So that's a question of what we call identity. So in my book, Third Circle Theory, I break down that every human being evolves before consciousness into 3 core circles: awareness, self-awareness, and then the birth of consciousness. This is a 40-year journey usually. You can do it in like 20, 25 if you're really smart, but like really aware. Let's not say the word smart. I like definitions correctly. But the second circle is the circle of self-awareness. The self-awareness is defined. You become self-aware only, like most people think they're self-aware. They're not. Let me tell you, there's less than 10% of the population is self-aware. And that's a very small number. People will get like, no, I know all about myself. No, you don't. You think you know yourself, but you haven't evolved enough to know every aspect of yourself. So you might know 10% of who you're going to be. I'm sure you know some characteristics of yourself. Most people are aware. So they have awareness. Awareness comes from the access to information. So they're lucky enough today in the internet world. New kids and new people have broadcast availability of information. So their awareness of a conflict, their awareness of a person's wealth, their awareness of a person's journey, like this interview, this awareness is available. It does not always reflect on your identity. So there's a very large 10, 15-year gap between the two. Identity in the second circle is defined through 2 dualities. Just like everything in life, right and wrong, good and bad, shadow, light, and everything else, identity also has 2 dualities: societal and cosmic. Societal identity means the identity you accept to be what you do for the world to see. My societal identity was I was a banker, I was a finance guy, and I believed that to be my purpose for years because I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do my whole life. I'm a money guy, right? But at some point, you meet your cosmic identity, which goes, strip society away. What would you be? Like, not because of the title society gives you. And I didn't really think about that until they stole my title at the bank when they fired me. Because I realized nobody wanted to talk to me anymore because I wasn't important. So I realized my identity is defined by my business card. So I said, well, it wasn't my purpose all these years, and that's purpose, something we can talk about too, completely different than this, but while it was my chosen purpose for all these years, when they took my business card away, they couldn't have taken my purpose away. That's impossible. But they took my identity away. So therefore, it wasn't my identity to begin with. And that's when I realized the paradox of identity is driven by 2 dualities, which is societal and cosmic. So my societal identity may have been finance, banking, and this choice of, even today, I practice my societal identity as well, like by teaching people specifically finance. And I'm not teaching people like how to be better lovers. I'm not teaching people how to go out there and pick up chicks, right? That's not what I'm doing. I'm teaching people finance, which is my societal identity. But my cosmic identity, which was teaching, right, became apparent the more I function as my ultimate choice of what I want to practice the rest of my life. I want to practice teaching. I want to continue to teach. Now, what I teach may change. The format in which I teach may change. Like, I may teach on books. I may teach in courses. Tomorrow I may teach in AI. I don't know. I'm not saying I will teach AI specifically, but I will teach. How I teach will change. But what I teach can also evolve as I learn more about life and choose to teach these things. However, the ultimate gift here is that the teaching will not stop, because that is the chosen path and purpose of what my cosmic identity was, you know? And that by mastering societal identity, I was the best banker, the best finance guy. I was able to lose that identity and go ahead and follow through my cosmic identity. And then I spent 10 years, people say, learning how to build an online business. No, I spent 10 years learning how to teach online.
That was
That's what
very
it pays.
well said. You're a very brilliant and intelligent individual, and I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because this is exactly what I'm in a period of my life of transitioning from working with Patrick Bet-David and having that identity as an individual in sales, crushing it, top performer, to now really honing in on my true gift of speaking and teaching. And I resonate a lot with what you're telling me. So I'm curious to know, was there a moment in time where you just made that shift and embodied that identity, or is that something that you just knew where you were going and then it just happened?
Well, remember, the second circle where identity takes place is self-awareness, knowing the self. So when I stripped myself of the societal identity, I was then able to wait for a moment and say, what is it that I do that made me be able to be so young yet so successful so fast? And looking back at a pattern of what it was led me to teaching.
That makes total sense.
Which led to I'm an educator. And I was like, okay, but educators are poor. I remember actually something that was really funny is me and one of my students were driving in my McLaren. I just bought a new McLaren. This was, the beginning of things.
I think I know where you're going with this, that there's I think it's a meme or a picture on the internet where it's a guy with a SVJ or a Lamborghini, and then it's it says no degree, and then it's like a...
Yeah, like in the other one that says scholar or whatever. It's not that. So one of my license plate does say no degree, but the main thing that happened, which was really funny, is I was in this McLaren, and at Starbucks, this lady walks up to us as we're getting in the car, and she's like, oh my God, what a car, and she's like, this is amazing. What do you do? And I'm like, I'm a teacher. She goes, that's impossible, I'm a teacher. And I go, we don't teach the same thing, lady. And that's the reality of a societal teacher and a cosmic teacher. You see, this is what I'm trying to show you. They're
very disruptive way of thinking.
Yes, exactly. This is not, just because you're a teacher does not mean you're conventionally bound by what societal structures force you to teach, right? So it doesn't work that way. So this is a good contrasting example of how the same purpose, right, can be used in a societal sense and be miserable for that person, and be used in an enlightening sense for someone else and grow the world behind it,
How did you break out of the societal paradigm for people that are really conditioned through their upbringing, through their family, through their experiences, that they were meant for something greater?
So I don't believe people are meant for something greater. I believe people have an opportunity to experience something greater. So one of the big things I talked about in my last book about how the roadmap to consciousness, called Gate of Choice, the subtitle to that book is A Dictionary for the Higher Human. The reason I named it A Dictionary for the Higher Human is because I believe one of the big reasons society is completely fucked up today is that we don't understand language, and we generalize language. And so when you say someone is meant for something, you create a sense of entitlement. You are meant to be great, so you just have to find what that is, right? So you're creating a sense of, this is what society does purposefully, a sense of God, a sense of this will be striked upon you, or something will occur in your life, and you will be blessed with that.
Good.
So you do that, you do that subconsciously, this is how we're basically that's how society, no, we're not programmed, we choose to allow that programming to occur. Most people who have a religion, you will ask them, great, what is your religion? And they will tell you, they believe in this or that, but you'll ask them if they've studied other religions in depth as much as they've studied theirs. You'll ask them if they've studied the history of religion in depth, like they've studied their religion. And most, you'll find, probably 98%, have no fucking idea about anything about their own religion, other religions, or any perspective to actually give insight as to why they're following a certain religion, other than they have been forced into this religion by their parents. This value system has been pushed on them, and they've never questioned it. So someone who's never questioned their value system clearly will never evolve to become anything meaningful of any value. So the problem with this mentality of using the wrong language is that language enables us to create definitions that enables us to shift our worldview from I'm going to be struck upon this opportunity to I want, not I deserve, to have this experience. What work do I need to do to be able to have this experience? So one putting the idea of a blessing, The other one putting the idea of work, which is not very attractive, but still, I think better to do some work and get somewhere than wait around for lightning to strike you and hopefully you'll grow up to be Spider-Man. You know, like it may or may not work for you. If it has worked for a guy, maybe you can write a book about it.
PJ, when I first came across your videos years ago, early on the entrepreneurial stage, do you remember that company, Entrepreneur? Like they were missing the...
That was Andre, yeah, Andres.
Andres Ocampo and David Blodgett.
He's actually in Mexico or something, got married, he's doing something good. He's not doing anything with business, but...
Yeah, I didn't really keep up on their life, but I remember that you were around that time, and that's when I started discovering you.
They were some of our students, so that's, because remember, Secret Entourage would teach people business and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneur was one of our students, Andres, who had learned business through our course, and he had decided to launch a clothing brand. He couldn't sustain it. You know, it's actually funny. A lot of people don't realize how back our roots go in the internet. Yeah. I mean, some of the biggest supplement brands, some of the biggest watch dealers, some of the biggest car dealers today are the byproduct of our teachings from early 2010. You know, and today they have huge jewelry stores and they're big online influencers, but I have testimonials from those guys that back in the day, they were like, I don't know the difference between a Rolex and a Breitling. They're like, you know, can someone explain to me why this watch is worth more than this watch? And today they're running the largest groups on Facebook, you know, like selling 50,000 watches a day, you know, and everybody's kissing their ass in the watch world. That's how far back we go. This is one of my greatest like secrets in business, and one of my greatest powers in business has been the ability to not take credit for my work and rather just do the work. Because you see, I've always done the work and I've never been excited about telling people, that's my student right there, that's my student killing it, that's my guy right there. You know, the only reason he has that business is me. That's the ego, right? I teach because it's my cosmic purpose. I don't teach because I need a reward or someone to come pat me on the back and say, PJ, you made me $1 million. I was broke and because of you I made $1 million. I get that every day. Every single day someone walks in here or I get a DM or something that, dude, you made my life turn around, I was broke, I was gonna commit suicide or something. I don't care what it could be extreme, could be not, you know, it could be as simple as, dude, I was working a job, now I'm making $250,000 and I'm free, you know, thanks, whatever. Doesn't matter what it is, like it's somewhere, right? Doesn't matter to me. Like, meaning, I'm gonna teach because I believe in what I teach. I don't really care. Like, I understand that the goal is to obviously elevate people. So I'm very thankful that we're able to do that. And I'm thankful that I'm able to continue teaching because I've been able to combine my societal and cosmic identity together in both the business and the fun things I do. But realistically, I don't care. Meaning, like, I don't get off this stuff. You know, like, I don't really give a shit. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna do what I do. If something prevents me from doing it, I'll figure out a different way to do it, but it's not gonna change because someone has an opinion of it, they don't like it, or they love it, or it's changed their life or not. It's just gonna continue no matter what.
And the reason I was bringing that up is because you've been in the game for so long, and I didn't think you had this depth of knowledge that you do, in which you've been able to build a big empire, like at the magnitude of size, where you just like humbly actually don't even boast about it as much as other gurus that I see online. And to sit down and hear with you and have access to the wisdom that you've acquired over the years and how you're helping other people really inspires me. And one of the biggest things that you said was putting in the work. Right? Doing that work. What is your daily practices, rituals, habits? What do you do from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed to ensure that you are able to maximize your performance throughout the whole day?
So you said something that was interesting first. I'm going to address that second question in a second. You said, I didn't see the depth of that because of other people online. One of the reasons people fall for bullshit online, or people can't attain or understand what's rich and not, it's exactly what I teach in my courses, which is how to read wealth. Most people don't understand how to read wealth. I'm going to give you some contrasting examples so you can understand the difference between how to read things. Kids see a Lamborghini on the street. They glorify that. But the Range Rover in their own driveway is worth the same price as that. But they don't know that because they don't understand how to read a Range Rover. They just know Lamborghini is expensive. People see big homes on Instagram, like huge castles, like guys, loaded, because they know that that castle in their town cost $32 million. But they don't know that that castle in Idaho cost $1.2 million. And their home, which looks like a box in New York, cost $6.5 million. When we don't teach our children or teach people what money is, how it works, and how its context changes based on understanding economics, supply and demand, and how it flows through an economy. Like, what does it look like when someone buys a house? What does a mortgage look like? What does a payment look like? Then they glorify whatever the media presents them. Obviously, you see less Lamborghinis than you see Range Rovers, so you assume Lamborghinis are more expensive. Obviously, these Lamborghinis look more racy than Range Rovers, so you clearly think that. Obviously, you don't realize that certain Range Rovers can be 250 grand. There's a Range Rover that costs 375 grand. That's more than most Lamborghinis. You know, but people don't know that. They wouldn't know that a two-door Range Rover is near impossible to get, you know, versus a four. They don't know these things. One of the reasons for that is because we demonize money in society, and we prevent people from thinking about money until they're in a state of spending it. So in other words, we tell people, you shouldn't look at that car. You're not in the market for a Ferrari. You shouldn't know anything about it. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to go tour a $10 million home to know what it's like to be in one, because you don't have $10 million to buy a home. We create boxes of finance around, well, if you can't afford it cash, why are you looking at it? We know cars are liability. You shouldn't. So we use 20-year-old educational principles in an attempt to create a value system for a child who will live in a world 40 years later, basically, by the time they're old enough to even use that principle. So some idiot out there on the internet is still spreading this stupid shit for views. How much car can I afford? Oh, well, according to this, it should be 0.8% of my income, and blah, 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 blah. And that's the principle from Suze Orman, who lived in 1969 and somehow is still alive for some oddly reason. That's the kind of stupid finance that takes people down the toilet because it corrupts their mind to understand one-sided equation. And you know what that equation is? How poverty perceives wealth. And if we teach kids how poverty perceives wealth, there will always be a separation from the poor and the rich. The only way we can bridge that gap is by enabling the poor to experience what wealth looks like, a taste. You won't want to be poor anymore. And two, giving them a path, understanding how it becomes a reality. So what does that all mean? COVID was a good thing because a lot of dumb people got really rich. A lot of businesses got loans they shouldn't have gotten. A lot of people made money in Bitcoin they shouldn't have made. A lot of people made extra cash that they went and spent on a ton of stupid shit, right? Like we know, like car sales were to the roof, watch sales were to the roof. This watch was $350K during COVID, you know, now it's $100K, right? Like that is the craziness of what COVID did. But why was that good? They lost it all, fine, but they tasted it, and they touched it, and they drove it, and they felt what it was like to go to a party where they dropped 20 grand for a table. They felt what it was like to actually be in a place where they didn't have to worry about ordering a $600 steak and what that tasted like, and they didn't have to go to Outback anymore. They also tasted what it's like to be in a Lamborghini and how the world perceives you when you are. And by having a taste of that, and while some people would argue, well, that's not a good thing, that's terrible, I would argue that probably 10 to 20% of that population that got a taste of it that was too early is now hustling their ass to get back there again, even if they lost it all after. And that's a good thing, because once you close the path to the top, you don't realize that the top is happening and growing anyways. And by the time you're ready to take on that path, you're way too far, and that ladder is way too stretched. So that's that. And we can see these contrasting arguments. You brought up Patrick Bet-David earlier as someone that you know. So we know he's very wealthy. Anyone that understands money can know that, because you can look at real estate, you can look at, not cars, he's not very good with cars, cars are shit. And I know I'm the only person, I'll say an SF90 and a Turbo S and all that shit is garbage. It's garbage for his wealth level. But it's still adequate to his mentality. And also his equity in the companies he's built and owned, and the money shift makes sense. Like, so nobody can go there and be like, oh, you don't have money, you're like poor or whatever. But he doesn't flaunt it, right? Like, okay. The argument is not who's richer, who's got more money or not. People spend money differently, right? Like he has, let's say, a $25 million house. Okay, if I have a $10 million house and a $30 million car collection, well, does that mean I have more money or not? Well, how much equity does he have? It's not a competing game. The argument is that my money will look more impressive to a child because it's in something they see and they know, right? Like, so in their head, they'd be like, well, if you're so rich, how come you don't have one of these? Everyone I know has one of these. Well, that's not true. People spend their money differently. And so it does not mean that one person is automatically like better or not. It's the viewpoint of the person watching and what they perceive to be wealth to decide that. There's a guy with a jet who's like, haha, I have a jet. What does your favorite entrepreneur have? Okay, well, let's talk about jets. This is the same price as most jets. There are jets out there that are $10 million. There's a jet out there that's $60 million. Okay, but most people don't know that when they're looking on the internet. They just know a jet, and they assume that's way more expensive than a car. I couldn't buy a jet today for like $1.8 million. I can paint it black, make it look super new and epic, and blast it on the gram and be like, I have a jet. And it would replace one car in this garage. You know, I would take one car off. You wouldn't even notice it's gone. You'd be like, oh, PJ just sold his car, made some money. And I would put a jet and be like, I'm taking photo shoots of my jet now. It doesn't change how much money I have because I just replaced the one thing with another thing. It doesn't make any difference. Someone not reading that or understanding that. Someone doesn't understand what it costs to carry a jet. They don't understand what it costs to carry a yacht. They see a boat. They go, that guy's rich, got a boat. Well, you can buy a boat for 100 grand. You can buy a boat for 300 grand. You can buy a boat for $30 million. And then there's some boats I can't even afford to paint and operate for a week, you know, because like I'll be drowned in debt and I'd be done, right? So these are the differences in understanding wealth versus not, like just perceiving wealth from your perspective. And often when you're poor, you're ignorant towards wealth, right? That's very, very important. Like to just not forfeit that, because you were saying that earlier and I didn't want to, you know, like take that out.
That was extremely valuable. And I'm just going to go ahead and dive in deeper into your books immediately after we're done with this.
Well, hopefully it helps.
No, 100%. And so what allowed you to do that inner work yourself? Right? What were those rituals, practices? What did you do?
Nothing. I don't meditate. I don't cold plunge. I don't diet extremely. I don't wake up in the bullshit workout routines at 3 a.m. because I'm ready to go hit the day. To all you scammers out there, you know who you are. The point that I'm trying to make here is that I don't do anything special. I'm just present. That's it. Like, my gift during my corporate career was not that I figured out how to be a better banker, is that I realized that everybody in a corporate job works 40 hours a week and is productive 3. And basically sits around and jerks off for 37. So I said, I'm going to work for 40 hours, which means that I technically work 10 times more than everybody. And yet I didn't work an extra hour. And when I hired an employee, I conformed them to maximum productivity in the slowest amount of time. So it wasn't about, I need you to do overtime this weekend and work every hour so we can meet sales. It was like, which idiot cannot hit sales goals in 40 hours when the average other idiot at the other bank is hitting sales goals working 5 of those 40 hours and jerking off 35? So imagine how much more we can do if we all work 40 hours. So I was never understaffed, because even though if I was missing 2 to 3 employees in a location, the other ones were working way better and more efficiently. That was it. Like, if I commit to doing a job and I said I was going to be a banker, and I was hired ahead of the goal, like meaning I was hired without the knowledge, right? Someone said, I'll take a chance on you, buddy. Come work in this place and learn about cars. And you're like, I don't know anything about cars. Well, it's not my responsibility to teach you about cars. It's your responsibility to go learn about it. You already got paid. You're getting paid now to be here to learn about cars. So time for you to go and study cars on your own time to be able to do the job you committed to doing. You shook my hand and said, I'll take $100K a year from you to come work here and do this. You don't have the skills and talents to do that. Okay, what is the first response? I'm not getting adequate training. Well, that's the poverty mentality. Okay, I'm going to go now invest that 100K into ensuring I can continue to receive that 100K and do a good job. I'm going to hire someone as a coach, maybe, or if I can't find the internet information free enough to guide me. I'm going to deep dive and do nothing else until I figured out how to honor my commitment. It's a simple gig. It's not complex. Like, wouldn't it make sense? It's logically what someone should do, right? But that's not how the world looks at things. That's it. It's that simple. There's no secret formula to being utterly successful in terms of a certain way of heading the day. Obviously, being healthier and working out once a day or once every 2 days, eating correctly is going to be helpful to your energy. Obviously, sleeping less means you have more energy to work. Okay. Like, you don't need me to tell you wake up at 6 a.m., have 3 eggs, roll around, do some kung fu, and then you'll be like ready to make $1 million today. No. If you have a job today and you don't love your job, you have a commitment to honor because you're getting paid from that job. You are still required not to show up, but to do the best job possible every single day that honor and commitment is there. And if you don't like that job and you haven't quit that job, you are still within that contract. And tomorrow, if you haven't practiced doing that for someone else, trust me, the contract between you and you is much, much harder to honor than the contract between you and your employer.
That's true.
Way harder. Because there's no consequence that's felt today for failing yourself. That's felt tomorrow. But if you're present in every single day, you're automatically going to win. Because most people live life without being present. So if you're at least present, you're already better than 99% of the population. And that's all you need to do.
And how do you make sure that you are present throughout the day? Mindfulness or...
Pay attention. If you're sitting on your phone for 20 minutes scrolling, stop yourself and be like, what the fuck am I doing? What else is on my list that needs to get done today? Oh, I'm talking to you maybe, and let's say this isn't an interview and you're just shooting the shit. I look at my watch and I'm like, you've been here 20 minutes. What do I gain from this? Nothing. Go away. Like, go figure something else. I meet people and they're like, hey, we meet maybe at an event. They're like, oh my God, I love the conversation. We should definitely link up. Here's my card. I'm like, you can keep your card. I'm never going to call you. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, that's so rude. Like, you don't want to be my friend. I'm like, I don't think you can bring any value to my life. Well, that's fucked up. Well, why is it fucked up? You'd rather me fake having 3 fucking cups of coffee with you, pretending I want to fucking like be your friend when clearly we're not going to have anything to talk about? I'd rather save you and me, whatever the fuck you get paid per hour, whatever the fuck I get paid per hour, to go do something more. I'd rather spend fucking 30 minutes with my kid than spend an hour with you or fucking 10 minutes with you. So why would I want to lead you on? That's what being present is not making an excuse for how you feel. Right? It's basically saying, I'm not interested in this conversation right now, so I don't want to have it. So like, not that I'm afraid, I just don't want to have it. Like, I could do something better with my time. And if you are present in the time and are choosing how you spend your time, you're preparing for what I call consciousness. Being conscious is the simplest act of being human. Most people will never be, because all of us are prisoners of time. We're always prisoners of time. Time is God. And that's the only function in the human experience that cannot be conquered. Can't conquer time. Doesn't matter. So what we can do is be in control of it. That's consciousness. When your subconscious forces you through time, it's forcing you to learn that time only moves forward. It's forcing you through that path. You're the byproduct of your choices. Today, you have choices. Whatever time gives you, these choices appear for you. And you believe your life is defined by the choices you make. And you go, I made some good choices in my life. And wrong. If you're conscious, that's how basically first and second circle people live. True time. Conscious people pass the third circle. Live true intent. You set an intent for your life. You create experiences that come after that intent. There's no value that is good and bad, right and wrong, and there's no choice of right and left. Only the experience that comes with it and the flow of time that occurs behind it. Meaning time is no longer pushing you through it, but rather you are experiencing time on your experience.
So good, man. That is so good. Who inspired you? Mentor, somebody you look up to?
I've had individuals that in the societal realm didn't mentor me, because I think, let's define, again, language is important. What is mentorship? Someone coming on, helping you through a process by showing you a way that's been proven before. What is mentorship to me? Observation. Observation is in paying attention. I've never asked someone for help. I've never asked someone for their advice in my life. I've paid attention to how others handle the obstacles I've been faced with. I've paid attention to how their bank managers manage the employees the way I want them to manage mine. I never asked them if they could teach me how to do that. I've watched them by offering my services for free so I could be amongst the area. Meaning I would work for free overtime, at a different location, only to watch a bank manager that I was told is the best, and only to observe what makes him seen that way, so I can understand what practice is, or what. Not saying I want to work here so I can shadow you, sir. Can I see you? I'd be like, I'll just work the teleline for you for free since you're short staffed, just to watch what's going on in this location, like how it works, just to watch how your customers interact with your employees instead. Is it different than mine? That I've done my whole life. And that's why the first book is called Third Circle Theory, Purpose Through Observation, right? So I observe life all the time. I always say you're present. Pay attention, right? That's always key. So I watch and see everything happening all around me all the time. But that doesn't mean that there have been plenty of people like my mom. I've observed my mom not giving up. I've observed my mom be willing to give up the greatest thing she's ever built, only to give me a chance to build something that wasn't guaranteed. I've honored that contract by making sure that what I built was greater than what she could have ever built. To compound that knowledge rather than say, well, I'm going to become a doctor and make 100K a year and put my mom in a home and be like, here, at least your kid made it. Right? Like, someone gave up their life for my experience. So I have to now create and give them back that time. My mom sacrificed 25 years of her life to ensure I had the best possibility of a future. I gave her the last 25 years of her life in perfect peace and harmony. So I paid my debt. Right? The contract is basically closed. The argument is the same for every single human. Like, I've never read a book in my life that I've gone from A to Z. I've glanced at books. I never really liked them. And I never really had a person tell me, like, this is how things work, or here's a point of view. I've debated a lot of people because I disagree with their view. And the beauty of consciousness is an evolving platform. It isn't a my truth is my truth and your truth is your truth. It's about understanding that your truth is related to the experience you live. And so if you choose to undertake a truth, then the responsibility that comes with undertaking that truth is the ability to accept that it is your responsibility to negate your own truth at all times. That means that one of the reasons I speak in certainty when I talk about people evolving, or I talk in certainty when I said this car's faster than that one, is because I've experienced both cars. I've experienced both cycles. I've experienced both processes. And any experience you bring to the table to try to negate my experience, you'll say, well, no, this is how the world works, will be backed by your ability to show that you've gone through all the experiences I've gone through, and I've also tested my theory and found that it cannot work. Here's why. And you'll debate that. And in that debate, if you accept that you hold the ultimate truth without staying open to the fact that another truth may be greater than yours, then you're not living consciously, you're living through the ego. Because you're more interested in holding the ultimate truth than in discovering it. So you cannot do that, like, no matter who you are. You can't say you're conscious and also right, because you're never right and you're never wrong. because that doesn't exist in the state of. So anyone that does a debate and tries to impose their truth is more interested in the outcome of others believing their truth than to discovering the truth.
So you're going to tell me this was all self-discovery, not
Self-observation, not discovery. Self-observation of other people, myself. Identity comes when you don't just understand, like the second circle is mastered, not when you understand who you are, but rather you understand who you are and who you are through who has watched you be this way and what has shaped the value of yourself. So in other words, if you hold a trauma, right, like as a human, you understand why that trauma exists and you can self-identify it instantly. Because you understand why that projection of that trauma is on you based on who has shaped your identity of who you are, based on who's seen you. You every day leave your house, your wife says you look nice, you look nice, you look nice. You have an identity that is starting to form itself towards the fact that you believe you're good looking. But if you grow up in a household where every morning you leave, you might be the best looking people, but the only people that see you constantly are, you're the ugliest piece of shit, you're ugly piece of shit, you're ugly piece of shit. And eventually, your confidence is down, right? Now, to have who you are and be who you are, you don't always control. Like what your parents did to you, you don't control what your teachers do to you, you don't control what I do to you, you don't control what happens to you. But you control your understanding of why that's happening and how to change it. You seek an alternative truth. You know, you seek to understand why you're an ugly piece of shit so you can change it. And by changing it, you surround yourself with people who agree otherwise, and your identity starts to shift. Maybe I'm average. Maybe they're saying I'm good. This was bad. But then the more I go, the more everybody thinks I look good. The more girls come up to me. So I must look good. Like now, your belief starts to shift until, again, you're proven otherwise. You know? Someone comes and says, you know what? Your arms are unproportionate. You know, I don't like the way your beard is. Okay, let's follow that truth somewhere. Is there truth to that? You know? That's how we shape our identity. So if we can understand how to shape identity, we also understand how we are shaped. And therefore, whenever we look and what we project is how we want our identity to be shaped. So we are no longer controlled by other people's judgment and perception. Most humans struggle with that. Instead, we are in control because we can shift to what we want that judgment to be reflected on.
100%.
So it's, yeah, so it's a little different approach to being a human, you know?
And what's your legacy? What do you want to be remembered as when you're no longer here teaching? You're a great teacher.
My books. My greatest achievement in life has been my roadmap to human consciousness through these 3 books. My greatest gift and curse is that I am more known for my societal identity than I am known for my cosmic one, in a way. I'm always going to be known for my teachings, but because I've chosen to teach a vertical of my societal identity, I'm blessed by the fact that I'm always going to make a ton of money. But I'm also cursed by the fact that it's always going to shadow the power of the real teachings I hold and offer. Because vanity, unfortunately, 90% of the world will always need a Lamborghini or want a Lamborghini before they want to become conscious. And that's also okay, and I've accepted that because, and it's also true for my life, and I've always said that societal identity comes first. And the mastery of societal identity in the sphere of evolution is money. So if you didn't make any money, you don't give a shit about consciousness. You only care about what you're going to eat next, what you're going to drive next. Once you make enough money, you start being puzzled by that. So I've taken literally a 100-year journey through my teachings to help people first make money, first learn money, first understand money. And once they have money, they've already accepted me as the teacher for that. So when they seek more, when the student is ready, the real teacher will appear.
Absolutely.
And so it's a gamble, but since I've committed to teaching, it's not like I have something else to do.
Well, PJ, I'm really grateful for your time and for the wisdom that you've imparted to myself and to every single person watching this episode. Is there anything that you'd want to add or anything that you'd want to say for the people that are watching right now? Or
No, I think we've said enough. My only piece of advice left to you is be present. That's it.
Absolutely. Well,
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully you learned something new, and hopefully all of you guys did too.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for watching.